back to sports today. We bring you this video segment every morning to help you catch up with things that have been taking place in the world of sport whilst you were catching up on some rest. Because let's face it, whilst you need sleep, I need sleep, the whole world needs sleep. The world of sport is something that does not really sleep. There's always something or the other going on. And at times it can be a little difficult to keep up with what all is happening. But worry not, that's why we're here. We've got you covered in that regard. And let's start off with the one thing that everyone has been talking about since yesterday, and that is, of course, MS Dhoni's decision to once again relinquish the CSK captaincy and hand it over to someone else, this time to Ruturaj Gaikwad rather than Ravindra Jadeja. Now, before we get to that, let's first talk about what it is that Gaikwad himself had to say. CSK have put out a social media video on their various channels and spoken about, in which Gaikwad rather has spoken about the challenge he has to take the team forward. And in his words, it's not really that much of a challenge, because what he said is that, look, being named the leader or the captain of CSK, it's a huge privilege, great honor, but I have an experienced group of players around me, so there's not really a lot of pressure on me. I don't really need to be doing a lot. A lot of these players know their roles and know it well. Now, whilst I happen to agree with what he's saying about them having a very strong core with players that have clearly defined roles, who know what it is to do, I'm pretty sure the pressure part will definitely be playing on his mind, because it's not easy to escape, let's say, when you are under the shadow of someone as great as an MS Dhoni. Jadeja found that out the hard way, and it's not for the first time in sport that you've seen a team potentially, let's say, struggle to move on from a towering imperious figure. We've seen it with Manchester United and their struggles post the Sir Alex Ferguson era. So it's not always a case of transitions being smooth. Even the great Australian teams of the early to mid 2000s did have a bit of a blip when they had to move forward from their various captains. So transitions are never easy, but at least with Gaikwad, what we know is he's taking it in his stride, and he was more importantly prepared, because this is the really interesting story about how it is that Dhoni came to the decision, and more importantly, how is it that everyone else at CSK got to know. And in true, let's say, MSD fashion, it was done in a manner so as to not take a lot of attention on himself, to keep things nondescript. He only informed all of the players about his decision on Thursday morning when they were sitting together at the table for breakfast. So that's when he told the players that he's going to be moving forward, or moving on from captaincy. That's when he told Ruturaj that he will be the next captain. And even more interesting, that's when he actually called up the franchise higher ups and said, listen, I'm done. I'm no longer going to be the captain. Ruturaj has to be the captain. And if you think it came as a shock to the franchise, it didn't, because again, Stephen Fleming has spoken about this, and we have those quotes up on our platform already. You can check that out. He said that, in 2022, when Dhoni made the call, we weren't really prepared. Saying this time around, though, we were kind of prepared that maybe he would eventually be moving on. So they were already grooming someone, and that someone, of course, was Ruturaj Gaikwad. Gaikwad was someone who, for the better part of 2 years now, they had been grooming to be a leader, and it's good to see that he's finally gotten that mantle. Of course, according to even more reports, he was passing a lot of, let's say, internal tests that CSK management, including Fleming, was setting for potential captains, and he was acing all of them with flying colors, which is why the franchise said, no, Gaikwad is the guy. They've known that for at least 2 years now. And even though they went hard for a Ben Stokes in the 2023 auction, you remember a lot of us have speculated that he could be a future captaincy candidate. The first choice was always going to be Gaikwad. Stokes was merely a backup. So definitely very interesting turn of events as far as, let's say, CSK and their captaincy is concerned, because a lot of us did also predict that Gaikwad did have the makings of a future captain, someone who's been with the franchise, sure shot starter, not someone whose position in the 11 has any debate whatsoever. And now he's going to be the captain going forward. His first task, to take on the Royal Challengers Bangalore in a home game. Now, why I mentioned home game is being very interesting, because we know for a fact that RCB have a terrible record at the MH Chidambaram Stadium, or the Chepauk. They don't have the best of records against CSK. In fact, the last time they won there was 2008. Since then, never won at the Chepauk against CSK. So definitely not the best of records. And one of the reasons for that also is that one of their talismanic batters in Virat Kohli, and their former captain, has often been nullified. Matthew Hayden recently was speaking to the broadcasters, and he pointed out as to why that is the case, that even someone like a Kohli, he gets unstuck when it comes to batting at the Chepauk. is that because there the bounce can be a little uneven. It's very tennis ball like at the best of times. And what tends to happen is that you end up going for a big shot, throw away a wicket. His advice to a lot of batters is that if you're going to be batting there, you need to take your time, get set. Once you get set, then and only then can you potentially think of getting big blows. And in fact, that's what he's also pointed out as being the big danger for CSK. He said that they need to get Virat out early, get him in the power plays, because once he settles, he'll be a dangerous batter. And in fact, that is, of course, the modus operandi of Kohli nowadays. He will generally look to score quick in the power plays, consolidate in the middle, and then, look to go hard later on in the match if he has to. So it's very interesting that Hayden mentions this, because Hayden said that his greatness can often be diminished in the Chepauk, and whilst that seems like a scandalous thing to say, he does have a valid point. I mean, Kohli's numbers in the Chepauk in the IPL, he's averaging about 30 odd, strike rate of 111. They don't make for great reading, especially when you compare his let's say numbers of the Chepauk to what he normally does in the IPL. So it'll be interesting, but of course we'll be previewing that game later on in the day. Switching focus now, world of cricket to the world of football, and there was an interesting match taking place last night. It was India against Afghanistan in the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Frustratingly, though, India only managed to get a 0-0 draw from this particular encounter. Afghanistan were definitely the more defensive of the two sides, despite the fact that Afghanistan were the home team. But of course, the disparity in rankings always meant that they were only going to play one way, and it was up to India to, let's say, get the initiative, seize the initiative, and try and get a few goals. They did create a few chances, but their clinical touch, or their goal scoring touch rather, deserted them in front of goal. So unfortunately, it's a 0-0 draw, and India will hope to do better when they take on Afghanistan in the return leg, which will be taking place on March 26th. That will be taking place in Guwahati, so it's a home game. Maybe India can be a little bit more fired up for that. Next up, we have some news from international football, and Leicester City, who you'll remember were relegated from the Premier League but now are currently in a good position to get promoted back up. Well, they have been hit with, they've been, let's say, potentially charged by the Premier League for allegedly breaching profit and sustainability rules. The Premier League making it an absolute mission to ensure that clubs, let's say, are complying with the regulations, which is even more surprising because Leicester, don't forget, got relegated. But because they were in the Premier League, they had to be showing their accounts, and there is a belief that their last 3 years they ended up surpassing the permitted number of losses that were going to be allowed to any team. So even though they get promoted back at the end of the season, because it seems very, very likely, it could very well be the case that they're starting the new Premier League season, the 24-25 season, with a points deduction, which means they're starting with negative points as opposed to the zero that everyone else starts with. Interesting situation, really, but also shows that the Premier League really keen to crack down on overspending and ensuring that clubs are run in a sustainable manner. Next bit of football news, and this is potentially harrowing. Robinho, the former Manchester City and Brazil forward, who of course had been convicted for sexual assault, there's come a thing now to arrest him again, and it's very surprising that he's only being arrested now despite being convicted in Italian courts and being told that he should be serving out his prison sentence in Brazilian prisons. He's denied the wrongdoing, of course, but the conviction has come, and every single, let's say, account that we've heard of this particular story does not paint Robinho in a great light. So it's very surprising that he's only now being arrested by the police, and he's being told now by a Brazilian court that the 9-year prison sentence that he was convicted for, he needs to be serving this time in Brazil. Very, very weird circumstances, but that's how international law works sometimes. A couple of other news, Formula 1 related, and Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time world champion who will be joining Ferrari next year, has hit out at the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem, saying that he never really had my backing, and there's a real lack of accountability in the sport. The things that happen behind closed doors, no transparency, no accountability. Fans need that, drivers need that. How can you trust the sport and what is happening if there's no accountability? It's the latest, let's say, blow that has come to the Ben Sulayem presidency since he took over at the end of 2021. And one of the reasons this is happening is because, quite frankly, Ben Sulayem has had a ridiculous number of controversies surrounding him. He wanted an 11th team in F1 when F1 teams weren't keen. He started proceedings against Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff's wife, Susie Wolff, because she's the head of F1 Academy, which is Formula One's women-only feeder series, for alleged conflict of interest, something that has been quashed and also resulted in Susie Wolff basically putting a counter, let's say, suit on the FIA and the president. Aside from that, he's also tried to clamp down on drivers wearing jewelry, something Hamilton was not a fan of, and drivers making political statements, something Hamilton was also not a fan of, which explains why it is that he was so harsh when it came to his wording, because I don't think Hamilton and Ben Salam have ever really got along. Last bit of news, Indian centric this time, and we at long last know who's going to be India's flag bearer for the 2024 Paris Olympics. And not just that, we also know who will be India's chef de mission, or as the chef de mission. The flag bearer is going to be Sharat Kamal, which is massive really when you consider that the veteran table tennis player for the first time is going to be playing in the Olympics and is qualified, because of course India had never qualified prior to this. So he's going to be the flag bearer. The chef de mission is going to be MC Mary Kom, a veteran, of course, of Indian sport and someone who's taken part in multiple Olympics, including, of course, the last one that took place in Tokyo. So big news there, really, and a big moment of pride, really, for a Sharat Kamal, because again, first Olympics, he's very much has veteran status when it comes to sport, and Indian sport really. He's been representing India very proudly in the sport of table tennis, but of course never really got to show that off at the Olympic level. Now he's going to be getting to do that, but also be India's flag bearer. A massive, massive moment indeed for Sharat, and big congratulations to him. That's it from us in this edition of the Morning Wrap with Sports Today. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate you joining us. And if you enjoy our work, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tap that bell, leave us a comment, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Don't forget to download the Sports Tech app. And if you're already on the channel, go ahead, check out some other videos we've done as well. For now, from my side, it's goodbye. But stay tuned, plenty more coming your way through the day.